before we jump in, because you have to go to soccer, and this is really important. So we're Iris and Nico, my nephew, and I are hanging out this afternoon. I was like, guys, want to watch a movie? Have some popcorn? And he said, sure. So we watched La Bamba.
Oh,
It's amazing. Here's the deal, Dad. There's two really important things about this. One, Lou Diamond Phillips shows up as Richie Valens, and Iris says to Nico, Nico, that's my father's celebrity crush. And I was like, that's not true. And at the same time, I thought it might also be my celebrity crush. But here's the deal. One other thing came up that's really important, and that is I realized that you bear a shockingly similar resemblance to Richie's brother, Bob. And I just sent you a picture. I'm not sure if you can see it yet.
just got it. Ah. He holds on to the gate. Richie! That's
Thomas
great.
Byers, Dr. Thomas Byers. Welcome to Fight Club. That's what this is called. I like to consider, I'm working on the tagline, but I'm thinking it's where faculty professional development meets 90s open access cable. So, listen, we had a great panel discussion of past and present high school educators, all to explore this question of what are the differences between high school and college, the audience being college professors who I think carry a lot of assumptions about high school students. A lot of those assumptions are naturally um, influenced by their own high school experience or their
Yeah,
experience as a college student. Um, so this is sort of our post show. This is just you and I having a conversation that's going to hit the high points of that panel conversation
great.
um, so that we can distribute it a little bit more broadly. So here's my first question for you.
Hit me.
One of the things that I hear a lot in my world is colleagues sort of bemoaning how underprepared high school students are. They're not ready for college. And like I said in our session the other day, they actually are very well prepared for the system they just left. From a high school administrator's perspective and a high school teacher's perspective, what are high school students prepared to do when they leave?
That was an interesting question that or statement that you posed to start the discussion. I came up with a laundry list of things that isn't necessarily what they're prepared to do, but rather what they may be expecting of the educational experience. So some of those things on the list for secondary students, and this is widely across the board in a public education setting. They're prepared to have their day highly punctuated with bell schedules, the schedule that takes them through their day. They have school information systems that update them and their families about ongoing work, what's happening in their students' lives. They have a counseling staff, even if it's poorly staffed, they
Mm,
still have an adult responsible for helping them through the hoops of their next part of their journey. And that's all state mandated in Arizona, at least with the ECAP program. You have to start that conversation freshman year. They have teachers who will regularly remind them of what is upcoming, what is missing, how it impacts your grade. There are so many interventions in a secondary school student's life that I can understand the shock Even having not been in college for some time as a freshman, I can understand the shock of what it must be like to have what. And that's something in our meeting that became apparent of all of the interventions that students experience in secondary education. I think I think most of those are gone once they enter
Mm.
their freshman year of college. And that includes community college. How I started my long and fruitful journey as a post-secondary student.
Well,
Um,
and I think that that's interesting, man. And I think that what really stood out in our conversation on Wednesday was how the two systems are engineered. And we talked about this.
yeah,
This notion of secondary school engineered to reach out to students.
can't let them slip through the cracks.
Exactly.
Got to get them.
And including their families,
Yeah,
which is uh, partly because that they are legally not adults. And so FERPA works in different ways in these spaces. And a lot of how college is, not all of it, but a lot of it is opening the doors of ton of resources and inviting students to use them. But I don't know that many students and their families, and certainly not the professors, are aware that that recalibration happens.
the that was stated at the meeting. There's so many resources for kids.
Totally.
Okay, and then it stops, and then it stops, and I'm wondering, um, even at a place where the teachers and counselors and the school is providing some self advocacy instruction, like you should be reaching out to your teachers, you should be organized and make sure you understand your resources, right? Even with some coaching, to whatever degree. Once you get there and you have a bouquet, all of these resources, quote unquote, all these resources, I think it's a tall order to say, go get them, Tiger. I mean, who's, I don't know, a burden of choice, maybe a burden of access where
Yeah,
they don't know how
totally.
to connect with them or when to.
Oh, 100%. And actually figuring out what resource to use and when is a skill set in and of itself. And so it's almost
Totally.
like one of the ways I describe it is like being a first year student, you generally have 5 classes, but just the process of learning how to be a student is like this hidden sixth class.
Mm.
So I have no idea why that happened.
Thumbs up, man. Did you thumbs up yourself?
I think I did. Dude, I'm
How do you do that? I bet that felt really good.
no, I hate that it does that. Anyway, listen. Um, one of the things too that I've been thinking a lot about since our conversation is because the systems don't talk to each other, the secondary system and the higher
Yeah,
ed system in any real meaningful way. And a lot of that's just because how we do school in this country. It's just
totally.
overwhelmingly like decentralized and localized. Um, when you were listening to that conversation, were you at any point overwhelmed by the information you were getting via inference with the world that college professors are inhabiting or college faculty or sorry, college staff are inhabiting? In other words, because you're always thinking about how to serve your high school students better.
Yeah.
Did you feel overwhelmed at any point about like the size of the gulf between these two systems?
I had never experienced it really, even literally going through it myself. Didn't even have the capability to recognize how far away these experiences are. And you know, a lot of folks just go through the motions, right? I'm in college now, figure it out. Um, but man, there was one teacher there who had taught in secondary and said that they brought some practices from the classroom, and I was like, oh my gosh, It sounds like they have some like special magic insider power because they happen to, for at some point in time, teach in a different environment. And that really highlighted it for me. Like everyone in the room was like, "Oh, very interesting. How neat that you bring some of those things to your own class here on a college campus." I was like, I don't know. It's so commonplace in K through 12, some of these practices that it was astonishing how underrepresented they are to some faculty in that room. And
Like
so
what
that's
are
just a teaching aspect. Sorry, go ahead.
no, no, no. What are those practices? Because I want people who are not able to attend on Wednesday to hear some of these things that are really common in the secondary space that are not common in the college space. W- And just to like prime the pump for you, I'm thinking about the conversation that you were leading about eliminating the guesswork.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, cons consistency for a student's experience is really good for their learning outcomes.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Oh, sorry, just to step around that real quick. Uh, you had mentioned as well, I think, in the same kind of conversation that one system, the K through 12 system, is designed to have I can't remember the exact words, but like supported learning outcomes. Like
Yes.
our strict job is to make sure that you have learned the thing. That's the focus. And in the college atmosphere, it's the I don't remember exactly how you said it, but it's a shift in that I am delivering some specific information to you for your future endeavors as a college student or in this field,
Yes.
for example.
We might think of it as a loyalty can sometimes shift structurally.
Mm,
And in the secondary world, the loyalty seems to very much be to the student. And in the higher ed system, the loyalty seems to be more towards the discipline,
yeah.
which ironically is how a lot of primary school educators feel about high school educators,
Mm.
strangely enough.
Yeah,
But
I heard it
another
before.
another way to capture this that's fascinating is how learning accommodations work. So and we see this a lot too. We didn't talk about this
We
the other day,
didn't.
but this
Oh,
is
wow.
important. Is if you have an IEP, right, or a 504 or whatever learning accommodation in high school, it follows you, and each educator has and correct me if I'm wrong, a legal responsibility to know and follow the accommodation. And um, resource teachers and special education directors are constantly keeping that flow of information going with regular meetings to make sure every teacher in the secondary system is aware of X students' accommodation.
Yeah, you're
And
totally right. It is legally binding, and it's legally binding at the federal level, and a lot of times at the state level too. Some state statutes reinforce that idea from the IDEA that everyone is guaranteed a well-rounded education, and that
uh,
includes following or presenting it to students with disabilities too.
100%. And here's the wrinkle in college. It's fascinating. So a student with an accommodation like that, when they come to college, will go to a disability resource office or whatever the nomenclature is at that institution. Will have to provide paperwork. It's a similar intake process. But, and this is an important but, the student will need to self advocate with the faculty member
Hmm.
to have that accommodation recognized. So I get letters from Disability Resource every year saying X student has these accommodations, but the student has to come to me and ask for them to be put into place. And so the distinction here is access to learning outcomes versus access to the opportunity to learn.
A lot of these students actually have disabilities.
Yes, yes. Well, and we see it in
So,
the freshman year all the time is to that point is we see students who felt a little burdened by the processes in high school or grade school or whatever. and they think because they're in a new school that they can, hit some sort of reset button. Super normal, supernatural. When I say supernatural, I mean it's a extremely normal thing to do, and it follows human nature. But what happens then is they end up in a real pickle because they have accommodations that have not followed them, and people do not know that they need the extra support.
Right, right. Unbeknownst to them, I don't have that accommodation anymore. So back to this this few things that are really neat that work in education for K through 12 that seem to be like, wow, that could happen. Um, Eliminating the guesswork. This would come into play for
Yeah.
universal design. And
Mm,
universal design comes up in so many ways. In fact, businesses use it a lot. The federal government uses it a lot so that there's no guesswork for contractors, for example, so they can get the best possible price and bids on things like that. Well, for learning, it's the same idea, is that there's very little guesswork for students. Everything is planned out in a way that really what you're trying to get from the student doesn't have these kind of hidden barriers or sometimes obvious barriers. So that could be a design where by some means you connect personally with your student, every single one of them, whether that's through a survey and you read asynchronously, or you have time set aside in class to connect with them. Or what came up in the meeting is like, if you greet your students at the door, that has an incredible impact on your relationship with them. So that's one right there, that just designing ways for you to know your student. And I'm not saying like in a deep familiar way, but that you can tell if they're off that day. You know a couple of
yeah.
interesting facts about them. You have an understanding enough of their background that you might even anticipate one of their challenges. Wouldn't that be cool? Or anticipate something that they're going to love. That's neat. The transfer of that to college environments, I think, could work in a lot of places. And I know in you guys designed, and correct me if I'm wrong, but trying to design some smaller class size
Yeah.
experiences, and that's a great place to start some of those transfers. Um,
I agree with you. And though I think that this is where we run into a cultural issue.
yeah,
And what I mean by that is it is still common that the hands-on work, the um, rapport, and the human connection and the humanism that you're talking about, some college faculty just see it simply as outside of the scope of their job.
mm,
I actually, this is a story. It's an administrator that I no longer work with, but years ago, I was talking about the importance of rapport. And this administrator said, I appreciate that perspective, Cody. It's very nice. But what about the brilliant scholar who has no social skills or social awareness? We need to make space for them too. And I think it was like, for me as like an educator, like a pure 100% teaching professor who doesn't necessarily have a huge research load, by which I mean none. Um, Zilcho. Um, I I remember being a little like brushed back from the plate by that notion of like, well, their job is to teach, but if they can't connect with other human beings, they're not going to be very successful. But the reality is that universities do many things.
yeah.
Some of that is scholarship, some of that is research, some of that is grant work. Not all of it is teaching, but it is likely that many people will end up teaching.
I maybe pick a bone with that's the wrong term, but it feels like the right one in the moment. college professors that have taught me that I know, they are really adept and continuously try to improve on so many aspects of their profession. The grant writing. Oh my gosh. What a time
Yeah.
hog, but you got to be locked in. You need to be able to successfully demonstrate that you need funds for whatever it is. The methodology that I see some professors go through for their own research is incredibly valid and detailed, and uh, you don't get there by accident. They sharpen themselves in their discipline. If the scope of the job also includes teaching, I'm not sure that should be excluded from the toolkit that we're trying to sharpen. So the idea that scholarship and discipline and the field in which you're in outweighs anyone trying to get better at educating a student, even in the different systems, I gotta pick a bone with that. I say, why
I
not?
know. I know. I know. I think there's a number of things that you said that are really interesting there. Number one is, and I'm speaking as a former high school teacher. Um, there is a little bit more bandwidth when your job is only teaching, and I
Mm,
can and I want to have empathy and sympathy for people who are teaching, researching, serving as a PI on a big grant. Those are lots of things that don't always have overlapping skill sets.
sure.
So I can imagine the challenge there. Um, I also obviously totally agree that teaching should be a huge priority and that we should place people in classrooms and in positions where they're going to be successful, which leads me to something interesting. So we kind of skirted around it in our conversation, but it is totally common in higher education that lower division 100, 200 level courses, where first year students go,
Yeah.
tend to be taught by faculty, tend to, not always, but tend to be taught by faculty who don't have a lot of departmental power, who may not be senior faculty, who may not have a high research profile. They're not generally, lots of room here for exceptions, they're not generally put into teaching lower division courses that can be 200, 300 people because they are excellent public speakers that enjoy teaching large classes. Some do, but it's my observation that is generally about who has power and who doesn't, and who sometimes just gets stuck
Yeah.
teaching those courses. That being said, that same situation does in fact, I think, also exist in the secondary system, and I'd want to see if this resonates with you. When I was a high school teacher, I was super good in many ways, and I felt really confident. And because I was super good, I taught all the upperclassmen AP courses, and I had the most um, like motivated students in the smallest class,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
also, by the way, led me to believe that I was not just super good, but amazing.
I was capital amazing.
Look at these kids. I just show up and they do the reading and ask me questions
Wow.
about it. It's because I am interesting. Um,
So only that's, I mean, you are. So,
Thank you very much. But seriously, that same situation does exist in high school, doesn't it? Or you have seen it.
oh man, the politics that play out in education, any any organization, the only thing that's neat about education when you think politics is that you are absolutely inundated with human beings who operate within political frameworks, whether you want to or not. You're in it, and I'm not talking about your party affiliation. I mean I have seniority,
Mm-hmm.
or I really like that class and I'm good friends with the person who makes the schedule,
Yes.
Or on the opposite side, I am a first year teacher and I will do whatever you ask me to and put on a pretty face so that I can survive here. And it's a whole spectrum, and there's power dynamics involved with that. But I think to address what you were saying is that's almost inescapable. And
Mm,
the affront, I'll give you an example in my own life. The past 5 years or so, I've led a big undertaking of adopting research-based curriculum and aligning curriculum at my own institution. And it's been up and down, uh, for sure.
mm.
And I was
What do you mean
all
by up and down?
up and down in terms of resistance, implementation, consistency, but we've made a lot of positive progress from teachers make up whatever they want to do. And that's just a singular thing where from my work. But I was always told along this journey from various people, you should do English last because they will not do a curriculum. It's like, what do you mean? They're like, they love their books too much. They've been teaching this book, this one book, for whatever, 12 years. You're going to upend what they do for whose
Oh,
benefit?
that's fascinating.
Sounds kind of selfish.
Sounds kind of familiar.
Sounds right. So I also under like because we're dealing with people, because we're dealing with interests and things are inherently political. Yeah, it makes sense. That person with the highest research profile, bringing in the most dollars, running a big team, they're not the ones being tasked with figuring out how to teach hundreds of students not only content but skills like, which was brought up in the meeting. No one's coming to class. Everyone's waiting to turn things in because they think they can just turn them in whenever. There's
Right.
all these disruptions, and maybe it would make them a stronger teacher, but I mean, it certainly would be frustrating.
Yes. Yes. No. And I think what is interesting is on occasion, um, folks who have more experience in upper division courses who are used to working with just majors or whatever, they will find themselves in lower division courses. For example, at our institution in 2020, many faculty lost their positions
Mm.
because there was a sense that there was going to be a significant drop in enrollment. It was pretty rough, pretty scary. And a lot of lower or folks who had been used to teaching these higher division courses found themselves in first year courses. And it was super interesting because they would say things, because they would call me because they knew I was the first year guy, and we'd have
Yeah.
meetings, and they would say things like, well, they're adults, so they can just choose whether or not they want to come to class, and that's on them. And I would say, well, yes, they can vote. You're correct. And they can buy a firearm. But that doesn't necessarily have a lot to do with their prefrontal cortex. And certainly as they transfer from a high school situation to a college situation where, as you've been saying, the entire day in high school is choreographed hour by
Yeah.
hour, activity by activity. You know, the school that you are at now, the school that I used to be at, we didn't even have open campus. Students didn't even leave for
Nope.
lunch.
Nope.
There's like almost no time management responsibilities. And so when you say things like, oh, they're adults, they can make their own decision, it's like, yes, that is true. But the gap between where they just left and the world that you want them to live in is gigantic.
It's big. And those skills aren't easy either.
No.
You were just just thinking about lunch. So like my third grader gets a kick out of reading the lunch menu for the upcoming week, so he can get like super excited about chicken nuggets or whatever, right?
He's a
Uh,
good boy.
he's a good boy. Last time I was at NAU, I noticed that the main eating hall is just an enormous buffet.
Yes.
They go from having having every single meal listed for them in good order. To, you see this card? You can go have whatever you want.
Dude, it's so
Go,
crazy.
go get them.
And there's actually a side note, and then I want to wrap up because I'm looking at the time,
Oh
and
dear,
I want to
yeah,
make sure
that's
that you can
fast.
see. I know, I
Let's
know.
let's hang out for like an hour and a half to 2.5 to 3 hours next time.
That's how men do podcasts, you know? So, but I did this thing with our faculty in FYS where I was trying to simulate a student experience. And so we rode the bus down to South Campus together one day and all ate lunch in these like large eating halls, the Doob. And it was great because I in all fairness to the faculty, they were a little frustrated because I didn't really tell them why we were doing all of this, so it just looked
Sure.
like I was really unplanned. So I didn't execute the learning opportunity the way I should have. But like figuring out the bus, super complicated, and there was a growing anxiety that we were going to get on the wrong bus and end up at like the mall, you know. But then we get down to the cafeteria thing, and all of us were like kind of overwhelmed by how does this even work? And I went to this like wrap stand, like WRAP, just to be clear.
Although RAP would have been super cool.
Yeah, it'd have been amazing. Much better eating experience if there was a wrap stand. But so I walk up and I'm like, "Can I have a chicken wrap?" And the person working pulls out a wrap and like dumps some chicken on it and then just like looked at me. And I was thinking, I don't know what to do. I don't know what like and then I thought, "Oh, it's now my cue to tell them what to put on the wrap because that's how this works." And so I'm like, and I'm also 43 years old. Well, I was 43 when that happened. And so I could bounce back from it, but upon reflection, if I was 18 and didn't know how to order a wrap, I would have never gone back to that stand again.
They would know it was you every time.
Well,
You
wouldn't
would.
you have been
I would have.
shaken?
I would avoid it. Would avoid
Yeah.
it completely.
So like they go from, and the reason I'm telling this story is in high school they go from the most scripted possible environment to
Show up if you want.
which they're like, hold on, wait, do I have a choice to not go to school? All right, so here's my gimmick. Okay.
Hit me.
Um, this is the part of our program called I must ask you a question. I must ask you a question. And for our inaugural show, we both grew mustaches.
Yes, I actually, in some philosophical, transcendental way, I guess I did grow this mustache for this show.
It
It's
started
just
many years ago.
just started many years ago, and now I have arrived.
Yeah, it's like the carving of the Grand Canyon by the Colorado River.
That's awesome.
So now I should probably come up with a question. No, I have one. I have one. So my question for you, it's I'm trying to infuse some utopianism because I don't think we do that enough in education. Be we tend to, I think, steer away from vision and hopefulness. Um,
Hmm,
and I don't think that that's always healthy. So I'm carving out a little bit of utopianism and optimism here.
I dig it.
If you could download in all of your high school faculty's brains an awareness of how college works and a sensitivity to the place that they're sending their students to, what would you download?
Hmm. So first thing that comes to mind, and I almost don't. I I'm challenged to say this. I'm surprised at myself. But hear me out. There's plenty of room in the secondary space for mistakes. Plenty of room. Plenty of room.
From the
Uh,
student's perspective.
from a student's perspective, plenty of room to mess up. Um, what came to mind is maybe understanding, or I would download, I guess, and I hope this makes sense. I would download uh, what some consequences in college are really like,
Hmm.
and be like, "Zhoop, I need to implement some actual consequences, not to deride students, not to make them not get out of here. But since there's so much space for mistakes, maybe we can draw that down in some way so that students understand that without anything else, at least they know that there are some consequences to the decision you make in college." And I know that's student centric, and I know that's putting the responsibility back on the student, but between the two systems, I mean, we're so focused on content in secondary that there is some time for other stuff, but we cannot provide the skills for them to make perfect choices. We can
Yeah.
at least give them a dose in a not so in a not harmful way, that you should at least give some consideration to the consequence of your choice.
So,
And
and I think that's a great answer.
I
Flip it.
don't know.
This is the other half of the question is what would you download into college faculty who are serving first year students? What's the awareness you would download into their minds?
A neat thing happens in secondary education, in education, actually, from K through 12. For example, the fifth grade student who does their little, goodbye from elementary school, they're giving those teachers hugs that they liked from kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Same thing with eighth grade promotions. That one teacher in their life that they go seek them out. The teacher has a
Right.
little card. Graduation, the whole faculty shows up. It's a celebration. You invite teachers to your graduation party. I would download the fact that you should do whatever you can so that those freshman students, sophomore students early in their career in college, um, consider you someone that they would invite to their graduation
Oh,
or
I love that.
something. Just to change how you see that student. It's not just about their learning outcome. It's not just about the field. It's I guess you said it earlier, a really humanistic aspect to it. I You said it before. The do these five things, that's out the window. This is
Right.
this is so much more complicated, but that's what I would download, is that perception of the students that tends to happen in K through 12 education.
Dr. Thomas Byers, thanks for joining Fight Club today.
Dude, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen La Bamba.
Oh,
It is so good. Oh,
that's
Donna.
just
Oh,
what they were. Yeah.
uh,
This podcast is over. It's already as good as it's going to get.
well, before we call it quits, I just want to note that his, his brother Bob was an artist,
Oh,
first
really?
off. Well, yeah, he took all those cartoon drawing classes. Did you not watch the whole
Oh, yes,
movie?
yes, yes. Sorry. I thought we were talking about the Isai Morales, the actual actor.
No, character. And what a good looking guy.